Formal wear is just a tactical disadvantage with better tailoring. Honestly, that is all it is. I was standing near the velvet rope of the Ethelgard Nexus, feeling the stiff collar of my dress uniform digging into my neck like a garrote wire, trying to look like part of the furniture. The whole room smelled like ozone and expensive perfume, a dizzying mix that made my nose itch. My charge for the evening was Matriarch Lyra. To the rest of the galaxy, she was the iron-willed sovereign of the Lyran distinct, a creature of geometry and ice. To me, from this angle, she just looked tired. Her iridescent carapace, usually a shifting display of authoritative blues and purples, was locked in a dull, matte slate. Stress. It is a universal language, even if you have 6 eyes and an exoskeleton. I shifted my weight, scanning the room. The problem with these high society galas isn't the assassins you expect. It is the boredom that lulls you into a coma right before things go sideways. People think Danger looks like a guy with a scar and a blaster. In my experience, Danger usually looks like the catering staff. That was the first lesson I learned the hard way. Routine environments often hide the deadliest threats because nobody looks at the person refilling the drinks. I watched a server weaving through the dignitaries. He moved too smoothly, not the fluid grace of a dancer, but the mechanical precision of someone counting steps. He stopped 3 feet from the matriarch, holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres that looked suspiciously like decorative moss. He did not reach for a weapon. He reached for his lapel, and the air around him shimmered. Nanites. A swarm release. I did not think. I just moved. Terran empathy is a weird thing. It is not telepathy, but sometimes you just feel the spike of malice in the air before it lands. I cleared the distance in 2 strides, abandoning all protocol. I grabbed the matriarch, who, I might add, is 7 feet of regal, fragile plating, and tackled her. We hit the floor hard, sliding behind the heavy marble barrier of the hydration station, just as the air where she had been standing turned into a gray, dissolving mist. The matriarch did not scream. She calculated. I could feel it. As I shielded her with my body, curling around her like I was trying to protect a candle in a windstorm, I felt her stiffen. Not in fear, but in assessment. Her primary hearts were beating a slow, rhythmic thud against her chest plates, completely out of sync with my own rabbit-fast pulse. "Hey, stay down," I hissed, pressing a hand to the back of her head to keep her low. My other hand was already fumbling for the seal on the maintenance hatch behind us. "Human," she whispered, her voice like grinding glass. "You are vibrating." I kicked the hatch open and shoved us both inside, tumbling into the cramped, sterile darkness of a service corridor. The door hissed shut, sealing out the screams and the gray fog of the nanites. Silence. Heavy, awkward silence. We were tangled together in a space meant for cleaning drones. My leg was thrown over her lower tail section, and her elbow, or the spiky equivalent of it, was digging into my ribs. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by the stinging realization that I had just tackled a head of state into a broom closet. I pulled back, giving her space, sitting up against the cold metal wall. I tried to look professional, which is hard when you are covered in dust and your immaculate dress uniform is ripped at the shoulder. "Are you compromised?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. I instinctively reached out, my hand hovering over a scuff on her arm plate. I just wanted to rub the spot, like you would for a kid who bumped their shin. Humans are weird like that. We see a scratch, and our brain screams, "Fix it." She stared at my hand. Her multiple eyes blinked in a cascading ripple. "You are emitting thermal radiation at an alarming rate." "I am just running hot," I said, pulling my hand back. "It is a human thing." "Are you hurt?" She shifted, her scales clacking softly against the floor. She looked at me, really looked at me, in a way that made me feel like a specimen under a microscope. Then her gaze dropped to my side. "You are leaking," she stated flatly. I looked down. A jagged tear in my uniform was oozing red. A piece of the marble bar must have clipped me on the way down. I had been bleeding for 5 minutes, and the politics were already worse than the pain. "It is fine," I said, dismissing it with a wave. "Just a scratch." "Look, we need to sit tight. That swarm is looking for biological signatures. If we stay calm, we might confuse its sensors." I expected her to panic. Most VIPs do. They start shouting demands or hyperventilating. But she just watched me. She saw the blood, saw the shaking in my hands that I was trying to hide, and she saw me focusing entirely on her safety despite it. She shifted closer. The matte slate of her armor began to soften, shifting into a pale, swirling lilac. "Ma, you prioritized my structural integrity over your own," she murmured. "That was inefficient." "It is my job," I said, leaning my head back against the wall and closing my eyes for a second. "No," she corrected softly. "A bodyguard neutralizes the threat." You covered my eyes." I opened one eye. I had, hadn't I? When we went down, I had shielded her face. Pure instinct. "It is a scary world out there," I mumbled, trying to lighten the mood. She hesitated, then reached out. Her hand, cool and smooth like polished stone, hovered over my knee. She did not touch me, not quite. It was the alien equivalent of a hover hand, unsure of the protocol for comfort. "The heat," she whispered, more to herself than me. "It is pleasant." I watched her. In the dim emergency light of the corridor, she didn't look like a terrifying alien overlord. She looked like someone who had never been held when she was scared, and that, more than the nanites or the assassin, broke my heart a little bit. "True authority remains calm and decisive when systems fail," I told her, trying to give her something to hold on to. "You are doing great. Just keep breathing. Or whatever it is you do." She let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a vent of steam. "I am spiraling oxygen through my tertiary lungs, Jax." "Good," I said, forcing a smile. "Keep doing that." We sat there in the dark, a human radiator and a confused alien queen, waiting for the world to stop ending. We scrambled deeper into the service tunnels until we hit the auxiliary med station. It wasn't much, just a sterile white closet with a few scanners and a wall-mounted medical unit. But it had a heavy lock. I slammed the mag seal shut and slid down the wall, leaving a streak of red on the white paneling. My autodock had the bedside manner of a blunt instrument. That is the honest truth. I jammed the injector against my side, and with a mechanical thunk, it stapled the worst of the tears shut and flooded my system with coagulants and pain blockers. I gritted my teeth, letting out a hiss of breath that sounded too much like a tire deflating. Lyra watched me from the corner. Her carapace had shifted color again, settling into a swirling, anxious gray. Her antennae were twitching, picking up the scent of the copper in the air. "You are repairing yourself," she said, her voice laced with genuine confusion, like a damaged starship. I laughed, which hurt. "Basically, we are surprisingly modular." I looked up at her. She was shivering. A rapid, now a clicking vibration that rattled her jewelry. It wasn't fear anymore. It was biology. The Lyran metabolism crashes when the adrenaline dumps. She was cooling down too fast. "Hey," I said, softening my voice. I pushed myself up, ignoring the way my side screamed, and stripped off my ruined dress jacket. It was heavy, lined with ballistic weave, and soaked in my body heat. I held it out to her. "Put this on." She stared at the jacket. Then she stared at me. "You are compromised. Transferring your thermal insulation is illogical. You will expire." "I am not going to expire," I said, draping it over her shoulders. "I am human. We run hot. It is kind of our thing. Think of it as a tactical heat exchange." She hesitated, then pulled the jacket tight. It swallowed her upper frame. She looked ridiculous and majestic all at once. She closed her eyes, and I saw her shoulders drop 3 inches. "It smells like combustion," she whispered, "and detergent." "That is just me," I said, sliding back down to the floor. Suddenly, the door shuddered. A heavy, metallic clang reverberated through the tiny room. Then another. The nanite swarm might have been confused, but the server, the one controlling it, had found us. He was trying to bypass the mag seal. I reached for my sidearm, but my fingers were numb. The blood loss was catching up. The room did a slow, lazy spin. I wasn't going to be able to aim, let alone fight. "Jax," Lyra said. She wasn't looking at the door. She was looking at the medical console on the wall. Her eyes narrowed. The panic was gone, replaced by that icy geometry I had seen in the ballroom. "I can't shoot him, Lyra," I slurred slightly. I think I am going to sit this one out. "I do not require you to shoot," she said. Her voice was different now, harder, clearer. She tapped a sequence into the console with rapid fluid strikes. "I require you to trust me." I watched her through the haze. This was the leader the galaxy feared. She wasn't screaming for help. She was rerouting the med station's atmospheric controls. True authority remains calm and decisive when systems fail. I realized then that while I was the muscle, she was the mind. And right now, the mind was angry. "He is biological," she stated. "Like you." "Yeah, I managed." "Unfortunately. Then he has limits." The door hissed open. The assassin stood there, a silhouette against the service lights, raising a weapon. Lyra didn't flinch. She hit the final key on the console. The fire suppression system inside the corridor didn't spray water. It dumped a localized, hyper-cooled gas meant to preserve tissue samples. A blast of sub-zero fog roared out the open door, engulfing the assassin instantly. He didn't even have time to scream before the thermal shock dropped him like a stone. She hit the door seal again. Wham! Locked. Silence returned to the room, heavier than before. I blinked, trying to process what had just happened. You froze him." "I adjusted his ambient temperature," she corrected, smoothing the lapels of my oversized jacket. It seemed efficient. I let my head thump back against the wall. "Remind me never to make you mad." She moved then, closing the distance between us. She didn't hover this time. She sat down right next to me, ignoring the blood, ignoring the dirt. As she pressed her side against mine, her scales were still cool, but under my jacket, she was warming up. We sat there shoulder to shoulder, or shoulder to thoracic plate, listening to the distant hum of the station's security finally waking up. Shared danger builds trust faster than any treaty. I knew that in my head, but I felt it in my chest. The barriers were gone. She wasn't a matriarch anymore, and I wasn't a servant. We were just two things surviving in the dark. "Jax?" she asked softly. "Yeah, your heart, it is very loud. It is disturbing my rhythm." "Sorry," I murmured, my eyes drifting shut. "I can try to quiet it down." "No," she said, and I felt her lean her head gently against my shoulder. "Do not. It is steady. I think I prefer it this way." When the security teams finally cut through the door an hour later, they found the High Chancellor's assassin preserved like a popsicle in the hallway. And inside, they found the terrifying Lyran matriarch asleep against a bloody human bodyguard, wearing his jacket, her breathing perfectly synced to his. Nobody said a word. They just knew, looking at us, that the negotiations were over. The alliance was already built.